February the 8th, 2024. Appreciate everyone coming out tonight. I know we're in a different place tonight, and just to give you a little background, back over the holidays, our council chamber got flooded, I believe it was, by one of the plumbing lines in our council chamber, so we had to relocate to the Gibson Theater tonight, and we appreciate staff here at the Gibson Theater for setting it up and accommodating us. And with this good turnout tonight, it sounds like this was the best place to be. So appreciate all y'all coming out tonight. We always like to hear from the public, and you will be given a chance as we get into the meeting. I would ask that you silence your technology, any phones, whatnot. Please turn them to turn them off or turn them to vibrate. I've asked we'll begin the meeting with the invocation, and I've asked Councilman Hopper to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand for the invocation. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we come to you this evening thankful for the opportunity to gather as a community. There's much for which we are thankful, and oftentimes we fail to recognize that all we have in this life comes from you. Help us to be mindful of your presence in all that we do and say. Please continue to bless our city, Father, and thanks be to God for all those who work tirelessly behind the scenes to serve and protect our citizens. We call on your wisdom and guidance now as we begin this meeting, that we make decisions in a fair and impartial way. For as in all this we pray and live to you in your holy name. Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in the pledge of allegiance to our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Council, the first order of business is your agenda. So the Chair will entertain a motion to adopt the agenda.
Make a motion that we adopt the agenda as proposed.
I have a motion from Ms. Arth to adopt the agenda as submitted. And since we have no technology tonight, I'm going to ask that we do a raise our hand. So all those in favor of the motion to adopt the agenda, please raise your right hand. It's unanimous. Thank you. Next item on our agenda is our public comment. This is the time where any member of the public can come to speak to council on any matter that you would like to bring to council. You will have 3 minutes. If you would, when I call out your name, please come forward and state your name and address. Ruth Harris.
Hi, I'm Ruth Harris, and 872 East Southgate Drive, Shelby. Is that all you need? Okay. I know there's a lot of other things going on tonight too, and I guess mine has to kind of do with that. But with all these new developments going in, I know the one big one's getting talked about tonight. How many developments? Can you guys answer questions that I ask or no?
We're here just to hear, and we will.
But I just wonder about, like, with so many developments that are coming in, we're having 200 houses back behind us. Jefferson, I think, got proposed to be built. I just wonder about, and I know you guys have thought about this, but like new fire departments, how many police are going to be needed? Have we thought about the children's clinic? Trying to get an appointment for your sick kids is already hard with the amount of people that we have in Shelby already. And I love that we're inviting new faces in, new places to come, but I wonder how fast and how big can we get without more infrastructure putting in place first, and just our roads and our schools. I know these are things you guys have all thought about, and I appreciate all that you do for us. And so those are just my questions and concerns. And I know a lot of people have a lot more about bigger things going on tonight. But thank you for everything, and that's all.
Thank you, Ms. Harris. Gus Martinez.
Good evening. My name is Gus Martinez. And I'd like to know if there's some kind of urban master plan for Shelby that clearly states the long-term objectives, quality of life, access, traffic levels, etc. Because throwing a lot of these projects onto a road where you have 70, 80 houses with maybe 160 cars is not good planning unless you increase the road capacity. I mean, widen it. I'm worried because I bought in Shelby because of quality of life and a small town feel. And I know for developers, they have other objectives. Where is the city council taking us to? Their objectives, our objectives? Can a happy medium be done within some parameters so that we don't lose what we like about Shelby? That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Martinez. And yes, we are very concerned about quality of life, and that's what our city council spends a lot of time on. So thank you for that comment. All right, that concludes our public comment portion. Our next item is our public hearings. We do have 3 public hearings tonight. The first one is consideration of proposed ordinance amending the zoning map of the City of Shelby. Mr. Longino, are you going to introduce this?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So first up under the public hearings, as you mentioned, is this ordinance, and this is for a zoning map amendment at Depot Park. All right, so just to show the location and sort of orient everyone, this is the old depot station downtown, right here. City Hall's right up this way, so it's that parcel, that shows it a little bit better, between Market and Morgan. This is the current zoning. Currently it's zoned general industrial. The future land use map shows it as in the Uptown Master Plan District. And the request is to rezone it from general industrial so that we can move forward with the Depot Park project there.
Are there any questions for Mr. Longino? Thank you, sir. All right, I will open the public hearing at 6:12. And I have no one signed up, so I'll close the public hearing at 6:13. Council, we are in the deliberation phase at this point. You do have an ordinance that's been prepared, and
I'd like to propose that we accept ordinance number 1-2024.
all right, I have a motion from Ms. Arth to adopt ordinance number 1-2024. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
And this would be a consistency.
Okay, consistency. Need to make a statement of consistency, if you
And
would.
reasonableness.
Statement of reasonableness about this matter, yes.
Because it fits in with changing it will help it fit in with our surrounding businesses and our master plan, and that it won't detrimentally affect the surrounding area.
All right, so with that is included as a part of your motion then?
Indeed.
So Ms. Arth has included her statement of reasonableness with that motion. All right, is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please raise your right hand. And it's unanimous. Thank you. Next item is consideration of proposed ordinance amending the zoning map of the City of Shelby. Mr. Longino.
Thank you, sir. So this next request is for the Blanton Farm property. It was submitted to the city in the fall of 2003, and as you all are aware, we've been discussing it and reviewing it since that time. So as an overview and sort of a starting point, I wanted to spend a little bit more detail, or go into a little bit more detail on this. My hope is to provide some information, since this is such a big project, so that we're all clear on the process and what goes into a project like this. So I'll try to keep things as brief as possible while providing as much detail as possible, so that we're not here till midnight or anything. So typically someone within our jurisdiction wants to sell their property, so they partner with a developer, come up with a proposal, and then come to the city for review and comment. And we share that proposal and those details with the planning board, the city council, and it goes through a review process and then a final determination from city council. So this particular project consists of 835 acres. They're requesting a change from light industrial to R20 and R10. I'm sorry, the current zoning is light industrial and R20 and R10. They're requesting a change to R6 CZ, general business CZ, and general industrial CZ. And what that basically means is that there will be 3 different districts. One will be residential, single family and townhomes. It'll be up to 1,642 units. And then the other districts will be commercial and industrial. So to elaborate a little more on the residential side of it, the overall density is 2.36 dwelling units per acre. So it's a lot of houses, but it's a lot of acreage as well. I've got some maps that will outline the different areas, but wanted to give you sort of the overview of the numbers there. 20% of the residential area, I should have mentioned, will be dedicated common open space. Have some maps to show that as well. So just to orient everyone on the location, this is the site out in West Shelby. I've got the Ingalls at Polkville Road highlighted here. Husker's down here. Ames IMC are these 2 parcels here. And then just for reference, the Blanton Farmhouse is there where the red star is. So the yellow is what would be proposed as residential. The pink are the commercial or general business zonings. And then the gray is the industrial area there. To look at current zoning, primary zoning is R20. There are some parcels that are LI, NB, and GB, neighborhood business and general business. So you can see from the different colors there which parcels are which. Some up by the Ingalls are that neighborhood business, and then the pink are the general business with the primarily R20 there in the light pink. Looking at our future land use map, which comes out of our comprehensive land use plan that we use as sort of a guideline for zoning decisions. It's shown as conservation development and agriculture. So conservation development allows for residential development and encourage the preservation of open space. And agricultural is primarily for farming and similar activities. So I want to kind of give an overview of what a conditional zoning is, because this is a conditional zoning request. The formal definition of conditional zoning is up there, but what you're basically seeing is that process that I talked about, where someone's looking to sell their property, they partner with a developer, they come and sit down with the city, and they say, this is specifically what I want to do and how I want to do it. And that allows the city to deliberate and look at our set of existing regulations, look at the proposed regulations, and come up with something that is agreeable to both parties in terms of meeting our standards that we have set in our UDO and our future, our comprehensive land use plan. So from this project, we have a conditional zoning document that's a list of those standards, and that is 19 pages that will regulate what happens on this property. And just to clarify, so this is a conditional zoning request, so if you all move forward, you would approve the conditions and the zoning for this, but there are still a lot of future approvals that have to come before staff, and there's a phasing plan that we'll go through. I'll show you all that, but there are other steps in the process. It's not just a yes vote and things start moving around out there. So I also wanted to review really quickly how density is calculated, because that can get a little tricky sometimes. So I mentioned that the property comes out to 2.36 dwelling units per acre. This is sort of a diagram to explain how density is calculated. In our Unified Development Ordinance, this is the same density in all 3 of these. So if a developer has a 4-acre lot, let's just say, or a 4-acre parcel, and they come in, divide it up into equal 1-acre parcels, that's the same density as if they come in and they put it on smaller lots and they surround it with open space and some buffering and things like that. So these are all of the same, and really we see that this is typically driven by the market. So if the market demand is for larger lots, they'll come in and do them as larger ones, but if they're demanding in the market smaller lots, then they come in and cluster them and provide that open space in there. So I mentioned that we're going to have a 19-page conditional district. I'm going to hit the highlights of that, give you all some insight into the things that we've discussed with the developer and the sort of the standards for this development. The conditions include a master plan for the site that I have shown on the next slide. But sort of drilling down a little bit, there's an extension of the First Broad River Trail, as well as new internal trails on the property. There will be sidewalks on all the internal streets, which will connect to those internal trails. There are architectural standards for the houses. There are setbacks and buffers for the industrial areas. There are landscaping requirements. There are specific permitted uses within the commercial districts and the industrial districts. We have reviewed the impact to city services throughout all of this. So we wanted to ensure that we have the capacity for all of our utilities to provide this. We expect it to be built out over about a 10-year period. So I mentioned a phasing diagram that we'll go through here shortly, and looking at it in phases is much more manageable from a growth and development standpoint to be able to handle those changes that we need to have in our infrastructure and elsewhere. But staff does feel confident that we can serve the development, and we have already been discussing plans for those changes. We've looked at the traffic impact. The developer has completed an extensive traffic impact analysis, which I have on another slide. But that's going to require them to add signals, add turn lanes, improve intersections, and we'll go through all that in just a little bit. It also is going to provide for a lot of green space. I mentioned that it's that 20% of the property would be dedicated as green space. The density comes out to 2.36 units per acre. We've shared this with the school board and the superintendent so that they're aware of the project. Again, trying to plan over that 10-year period as things are built out. And there will be an HOA for this community. That's in the conditions document as well. There probably will be multiple HOAs for some of the different phases. You'll kind of see how they're split up. But wanted to mention that that's been discussed too. So here's the master plan. It's the same picture that I showed on the first slide, just with a few different colors that kind of highlight all the different uses. Again, I mentioned it's 1,642 dwelling units, or up to that amount. 364 would be single-family 50-foot lots. 789 would be single-family 40-foot lots, and then there's some townhome lots as well. And the commercial sites total 15.8 acres, and the industrial sites 106.7. So I've got some labels on here to try and orient everybody, since this is basically that big map that I just had up here zoomed in. Washburn Switch Road is over here to the left, and Highway 74 is down at the bottom. This amenity center down here is actually where the Blanton Farm house is. So this just shows sort of the first phase, and it's actually broken up into sub-phases. But this would be all residential with those single-family homes and some of the townhomes down there in green. And staying zoomed in, kind of moving down to the south, we've got IMC Metals America over here in Old Boiling Springs Road. This is more residential development. That gray is the industrial development over there. But again, some townhomes and single-family residential. And I do have a map towards the end that will show some of the additional trails and those changes. But the First Broad River Trail is over here, and that will be extended as well with this project. This is the northeast quadrant. So you've got Ingalls down here with Highway 74, and some additional townhome housing is provided up there. This is the map of the trails that I mentioned. The pink trails, or fuchsia, you might say, are internal trails, and will connect to those internal sidewalks on all those streets. So you'll be able to walk from one street through a trail and connect to another part of the neighborhood. There'll be a connection, you'll notice down here off the First Broad River Trail, that'll connect the First Broad up to the development, and then that green dashed line is the actual extension of the First Broad River Trail. And there have been conditions and standards that are put into that document that revolve around those trails as well. So I mentioned it earlier that wait a minute, sorry, I skipped ahead. So this is the traffic impact analysis that the developers have done. It's probably a little hard to read, so I'll try and break it down some. In the middle here, we've got a traffic light circled at Old Boiling Springs Road, so that would be an improvement that would be implemented. There are some additional turning lanes that would be implemented along Polkville Road. That's what those highlights are there showing. There's actually a recommended light down at West Marion Street, all the way down past Ingalls. Then there would be 2 additional lights at the Shelby bypass in the future, and then some additional turning lanes and changes on Washburn Switch Road there, where it hits 74. So I mentioned earlier that the comprehensive land use plan identifies this property as being agricultural and conservation development uses. Like I mentioned, conservation development allows for the development of residential uses while encouraging open space, and agricultural uses include farming as the predominant form of activity. There is text in the comp plan that speaks to how the outer rim of the city sort of envisioned as agricultural in 2009 when that was put together. But due to it being partially consistent with the land use plan and then being consistent with development trends in the area with the industrial and residential growth that we've seen out that way, the planning board and the staff do recommend approval of this proposal. I'll take a breath, and if there's any questions, I'd be happy to.
Any questions, Mr. Longino?
I know that at the last time this was on our agenda, just briefly, I mentioned that the section at the intersection of Polkville Road and 74 had a cemetery.
Yes, ma'am.
It's the middle pink section there, yeah. And I don't remember, was the developer here that day? I think maybe they spoke.
This is the first time it's appeared on the city council agenda.
No, I spoke to somebody about it.
No.
Previously had.
No, it's not. We
Yeah.
spoke about it.
There was a planning board that was in November.
Okay, maybe that's where I heard it.
The planning board has met on this matter to make a recommendation, but you will recall previously that the developer requested meetings with city council and small groups
Right.
and to introduce the
I've-
project back in
Right,
September.
that's where I brought it up. So I identified that there was a cemetery, a historic cemetery in that center section, and wanted to know if they had made, any, if they were going to leave that
Mr. Lunch, can you
alone.
address that? Or
Yes.
Mr.
Yeah,
Longino want-
so we are, as a city, aware of the cemetery. It's a Revolutionary War soldier, the Elliott family. The Elliott family has also contacted us by letter to make us aware and certain that the developer is aware. The developer is aware. He addressed this directly at the November Planning Board as well. The state law essentially is that family members or other historical interests have rights to enter upon the private property or public property for the presentation of the gravesite. In this case, the gravesite plans to be preserved. Technically, the developer doesn't have to do that. They want to do that, but that's under state law. And in this case, the state law is what we have to go by. And in regards to what the plan development is, the developer plans to go beyond what that state law is regardless.
So they
And so it
plan
will
to
be...
protect beyond what state law requires.
Yeah, the state law just says that you have to allow family or other interested parties onto the property if you are to do so. If the developer chooses not to do so, then the interested party or family can actually seek a petition through the Superior Court clerk, and then the clerk makes a decision from there. But in this case, they want to avoid that. They want to recognize the historical nature of that and what the Elliott family provided to the U.S.
Fantastic, thank you. I know that'll mean a lot to them, so I appreciate you addressing that.
All right, any more questions for Mr. Longino?
No.
All right. Let me, just a quick question about the traffic improvements. With those improvements that came out of the study, those would be on the developer's dime to do those improvements?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. All right, we are now...
Sorry,
You have a
I wanted to make sure. Sorry, just one little extra bit. In order for us to hold them to saying that they're going to go above and beyond, do we need to have them add it to their conditional use permit request?
Conditional zoning and
Zoning.
for this, I don't recall that it's in there currently as a planned park.
I don't believe that it is.
It is something that we could theoretically negotiate. the developer has to agree to that as well. So we can't unilaterally make it happen.
Oh,
but
of course.
if we were to put it in a conditional zoning and the developer agreed, then it could be incorporated into conditional zoning, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that would probably be best, if possible.
I would just note that if you do that, then you make the city a party to that issue, whereas now it's a civil matter between private parties, between the family and the developer in terms of access. If you make it part of that, then you put the city in the middle. I just want to make sure that we're clear on that
Well,
potentially the city could be put in the middle
My
when we
under-
really have no jurisdiction over the matter.
My understanding of, a conditional use, zoning request is that anything that we want to be able to hold them to, that they've said, needs to be in there, correct?
Not necessarily, and I'll let
Okay.
the attorney speak to that, but if it's a matter over which we have jurisdiction,
Gotcha.
that's a little bit different, but
This one is
again,
state
I'll defer to the
jurisdiction.
city
Yeah.
attorney on that.
Sorry to nitpick, I apologize, guys.
Right. So again, the state law mandates access be available, but the state law doesn't mandate preservation, and we can't dictate terms beyond that without entering into a private contract, and then we are, again, at a contract between the private developer and then any other future family interests that may arise that could create other complications and legalities. And so the developer has a plan. The developer plans to I believe Brandon is here. I saw him earlier, and I'm sure he'll talk about that plan. But there is one.
Perfect.
And to the best of my knowledge, it will be preserved.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Thank you, guys.
All right. If there's no more questions, I'm going to open the public hearing at 6:27. And as I call out your name, please come forward and state your address. And first one is Allison Mintz.
Hope you can hear me. My name's Allison Mintz, Allison Elliott Mintz, and tonight I'll be addressing the preservation of the graveyard on the Blanton Farm, and my address is 127 Elliott Circle Drive, Ellenboro, North Carolina, but I am in Cleveland County. I'm a direct descendant of Martin Slaughter Elliott. He was my great-great-great-great-grandfather. He's the American Revolutionary soldier that you guys just referred to. I actually own the farmland that was part of his son's land, John Crenshaw Elliott. So family's really important to the Elliott family. We have a reunion, and people have been up to the gravesite many, many times. Martin Elliott was a veteran, like we said, of the Revolutionary War. He fought in the Battle of Kings Mountain with the 1st Regimental Dragoons of the Continental Troops. He once owned and farmed the property now known as the Blanton Farm. He, along with other family members, were buried on the knoll overlooking what is now the intersection of Highway 226 North and Highway 74. The original Martin Elliott Cemetery was inventoried in 1939 as part of a WPA project. At that time, there were at least 12 family members buried there. By 1939, there was a 9 by 8 foot concrete slab that was poured over 5 of the graves. And at some point, a government marker was erected in honor of Martin Elliott's contributions in the American Revolutionary War. According to interviews of individuals who had worked on the Blanton Farm, up until the 1980s, the cemetery's boundaries were well delineated. All the field stones that marked graves were still there. However, according to an eyewitness account, during the 80s, the baby's crypt was broken apart with a sledgehammer. In August of 2007, several of the descendants visited the site and found the field stone markers moved and thrown outside the fenced-in area along the bank. And those of you that got the packet, the later part of it showed the field stones outside of the barbed wire. It was a little strange if you didn't know what you were looking at. The baby's crypt was retrieved, parts of it, in 2011 from the roadside because they had either been pushed or ended up traveling down on the side of the road. So that was there. Additionally, cattle have grazed over the graveyard, and currently there are pine trees growing in the fields, and some can be on top of the graves. With the prospect of the Blanton Farm property being rezoned and a housing development begun, I'm concerned about the protection of the grave sites and the graves whose markers have been removed. The Elliott family would welcome the cooperation of the developers to have an investigative survey performed with non-invasive archaeological equipment. We're talking about the ground penetrating radar to find those graves that are now unmarked and reestablish the cemetery boundaries. Due to the historical and genealogical importance of this site, it is important to reestablish the cemetery for North Carolina State, County, and City records and add to the WPA survey completed during Roosevelt's administration. My relatives and I also request that the gravesite be marked on all development documents, protected during construction and timber harvesting, and preserved with access for current and future descendants to visit. Additionally, should the development come about, some type of protection against vandals should be erected around the perimeter of the cemetery. And what Ms. Arth was talking about, having it in the conditions, it would be nice to have it on the maps, at least, instead of just a red dot. It's really important to our family. We've not forgotten it, and we've been fighting this battle to preserve the cemetery for years. And this is not just some lark that we have and just came up with it. 6 years ago, we had gathered most of this information. And when Mr. Fasu sent the packages to y'all, that was because we already had that done. We tried to get help with law enforcement to try to get things protected, and that didn't work. And we've tried to do all kinds of things, even had some communication with the Blanton's lawyer. So this is a good time for it to be brought out to the public that it is a cemetery. It should not be desecrated. It's state law that it should be protected. And that's why I wanted to come today. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mintz. Thank you. John Ferguson.
Good evening, John Ferguson, 221 Palmer Road, Lawndale, North Carolina. Mr. Mayor, City Council members, I thank you for your time tonight. I thank you for your transparency with this project. Y'all done a fabulous job. My wife and I moved here in 2007 from Florida. I have a unique situation of being third generation Hillsborough County, Tampa, if you will, descendant. So I saw in my lifetime and my dad saw in his lifetime the good, the bad, and the ugly of public planning. Y'all have done great with the rails to trails. You've acquired right away. The river project is phenomenal. Uptown Shelby, all the cut curb, phenomenal. You've done a great job. 1,642. 3 per. That's 5,000. 5,000 people. Now, we're not going to assume they all come from out of the area. 2020 demographics, I believe, is about 100,000 in the county. If you look at your display there, and this is probably not to scale, but pretty close. If you take a postage stamp or a playing card, that's your 630-acre project, and the stream represents the whole county. That is tremendous population density. Impact on the roads, impact on the infrastructure, impact on the schools. And I do believe a person's property rights to develop it. But let's do this right. You have one chance to do this right. And all I ask is you take this to heart, because in almost 20 years, this is the most significant project. And this will set the precedent and open the doors of all the projects to come. When we first moved here, we couldn't do trick-or-treating. They did trunk-or-treat. We couldn't do trick-or-treating in Popeville because there were no homes. So what do? We went down to Pebble Creek. Pebble Creek is a model, in my opinion, a model development. Population density, beautiful, beautiful. Not everybody can afford to live there, but it was done properly. In my opinion, I want my family and my grandkids to grow up here in an area that's more like that with a density than Concord Mills. Please, Mr. Mayor, please, City Council, don't give us Concord Mills. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ferguson. Dennis, please. Dennis Blaine, sorry.
Okay. Everybody does it. My name's Dennis Blaine. I live at 209 Webb Farm Road in Shelby. I live outside the city limits, but travel that 74 area and love the open space that those trees represent. We moved here 16 years ago from a city where if I had a 75-foot frontage on my house, and when I opened my daughter's bedroom, I could watch TV in my neighbor's house. They were that close together. You're talking a 40-foot frontage here. And then the car issue, 1,642 units. That's if half of the units have 2 cars and the other half have only 1 car, that's 2,400 cars that are going to be in that area coming out on a Monday morning. And even if half of them don't work, you still got 1,200 cars coming out. Now, I talked to the gentlemen, the developers, and they were talking about $3.5 million in infrastructures. That ain't going to touch the roads. So the city's going to be on the hook for that. Water, fire. Right now, my fire department comes from a volunteer fire department in Shanghai. Where's the fire department coming from here? Shelby? If it's coming from the center of town, that's going to take a while. Throw all those cars in the mix as well. Walmart shift changes. That whole intersection backs way up. They're going to have to do some major renovations to that whole intersection. And I appreciate the PowerPoint presentation, but a whole lot of time was spent on open space and trails and not a whole lot on intersections, road improvements, or water. What about our police department? We have a police department now that I think is probably a little understaffed. Add that many people in that kind of cluster of a neighborhood, you're going to have a whole lot. And now what happens if these phases want to come in early? Is the city ready to fork out extra money ahead of schedule? Because these conditional phases, they now come to you and say, oh, we want to move that up because now we can afford to do this. They're going to sit on a whole lot of money for 10 years? I don't think so. And then what about our schools? The schools, you're going to have more schools because you're going to have more people. Even if you get a third of those 1,600 people, a third of them is going to be 500 kids. What are you going to do with 500 more kids in the city? The schools are going to have some major improvements. And that's going to cost dollars that I don't think this city has. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Blaine. Stacy Hebner.
Good evening. How are you guys? I'm Stacy Hebner, 1802 David Drive in Shelby, North Carolina. Lifelong resident here. I noticed something coming in the building today. It was nice and quiet. You know, it's nice and quiet. So we look at high density, and we can go into neighborhoods all around us and look at high density and what it looks like. It's ugly. It's tight. It's congested. Has no charm. Has no character. And it's not a pleasant place to live. I lived in Huntersville, next to Burkeville Village. Quarter-acre lot. It's tight. Nice area. Had a child. It's time to come back and be around the grandparents. So as I look at these maps and I look at what you're wanting to do or what the developer's wanting to do, there's already sufficient zoning for residential. There's already sufficient zoning for industrial. We've got Cleveland, Utah on that side. We've got Metals America on that side. So there's already perfect zoning. But what it doesn't allow is for a major developer to come in and hit a gold mine. Now let's look at the density. Those of you that are involved in real estate know that if you're selling units at $290,000 a piece, that was their word, not mine, at 1,200 to 1,400 square feet, there's not a demand in this town from current citizens for those homes. That is going to start catching the citizens that are going to be escaping these urban populations that we have to our east. And so what we're going to do is we're going to start catching their flight from overtaxation and high cost of living, and it's going to come to our town. There's no need for high-density developments in this town. So I encourage the council to start looking at standards that other counties have adopted to where it's a half acre per single family home. Sure, we have an inner city here that has a lot of quarter acre smaller, what I'd call city lots that could be redeveloped. Those can be grandfathered in, but we have to control our growth. All due respect to the developers, they do not live here. They don't break their bread here. They don't make their living here. They don't raise their children, their grandchildren. They have no seeds here. They have no anchors here. This is a business opportunity for those guys. I understand it. I'm a capitalist. But we, as citizens who live here and have to govern this place, we have to control it now on the front end and not on the back end. In closing, as we walk down this historic street, and I stand in this historic theater where I had the bejesus scared out of me in 1979, where I seen Jaws in this movie theater, I want us to be a steward of this community for like the gentleman who moved here from Florida, and for those of you who've come from Rutherford County and who have been welcomed here. I want people to come to this town, but we need controlled expansion. We need controlled development. We got caught over behind Jefferson School. We've been caught in other places in this town, and it's going to cost us. The last thing I want to state is that we're talking about a major development with major improvements to the infrastructure. Where I live at, off of Country Club Road on my street, it's full of potholes. We had to use grants to start paving our city streets. Okay? We're not prepared. I know what the city representative said. We're not prepared to start undertaking those kind of major infrastructure improvements. So I ask you tonight, this is a historic moment. Do you want to be on the side of history that maintains what people before us have given us today? A lot of hard work, tears and sweat and blood has built this city. And this city needs to be redeveloped from the inside out, but it has to be controlled. So I ask you tonight, if you do take a vote, I would ask you to look at the citizens, the people that you look at every day, and honor them by voting if you do give it a vote tonight. And I do appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Brandon Bridges.
Brandon Biden.
Wait a minute. I think there's two Brandons here.
Oh.
Brandon Bridges. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Good afternoon. My name is Brandon Bridges. I live at 307 Old Mill Road. I'm a lifetime resident of Cleveland County, North Carolina. So a lot of things come to mind whenever you're discussing a project of this caliber. One of the first things I thought about was a few months ago whenever the county commissioners unanimously decided not to grant a similar project of a much lesser scale in the Lawndale area for some of the same reasons that people before me have already spoke about. Infrastructure, schools, roads, all this stuff that needs to be considered before some project of this caliber comes in. There's a lot of things to take in and think about with this. If we're looking at $290,000 a house starting price, the median income in this area was less than $46,000 per household in 2021. It's not going to be people in Cleveland County that are going to be buying these homes. And my question is why do they want to come here? I've enjoyed the rural living. I've lived in Upper Cleveland County for the majority of my life. Consultants come in. Somebody spoke about the school board and the superintendent being notified of this earlier on in the meeting. I was at a school board meeting a few months ago whenever consultants came in and told them that there was not going to be significant population growth in this area. So who's correct? I love living in Cleveland County. I bought a house in 2018 and it's almost doubled in value. You might think, well, that's good. But whenever I go to sell it and move somewhere else, I'm going to have to pay just as much money to move somewhere else. What does that mean for the people coming up behind me whose families have lived in Cleveland County their whole life and they're not going to be able to afford nothing because of the way everything's gone up and these high-priced developments coming in, and that might be their only option. There's a lot to think about, and I appreciate your time. I just wish if you would just think about it and think about how this is going to impact the citizens of Shelby, North Carolina, the people who are living here for generations, whose families have lived here all their life and would like to continue living here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bridges. Brandon Pridemore.
Brandon Pridemore, 86 Stonecrest Boulevard, TK, South Carolina. I'm with R.J. Harris. We're the civil engineering consultant here, represent South Fork Ventures. I'd like to just touch on a few things high level and then not get too much into the details, and I guess if there's an opportunity for post follow-up, we're going to be available. But I did want to address, first of all, that this is, as you well know, a project that we've taken considerable amount of time to get to this point. We started looking at this property in the fall of 2022. We started our first meetings with economic development in March of 2023. And we followed that with a meeting that we had with the school superintendent, Dr. Fisher, to make sure, hey, if we bring a project like this early on, is it going to be of concern? And he told us no, it would not be, that they could plan for it accordingly, and that they had some different short-term ideas that would be able to take this growth on as well. And so that he actually thanked us for meeting him early and giving him an opportunity to start digesting this information and plan for it. So, we did do a lot of homework. We talked with economic development, said, hey, what do you guys need? What do you see? And one of the things we heard was, well, we'd love to have industrial opportunities, which this plan presents. We consolidate the industrial from where it's currently zoned to where we think it can be a better industrial site than what the current zoning allows. So we've consolidated that. And then the other part was being able to provide housing and a variety of housing. So when we look at this project as a whole, we're not looking at it as just a subdivision. We're looking at it as a community, that's going to be kind of the anchor, if you will, for the city of Shelby to the west side of this. And so we're looking at a master plan community. And one of the gentlemen spoke and said that, hey, you got one shot, let's make sure this is right. And we completely agree, but probably have a different opinion of what we mean by that. Here we're taking a bunch of different properties that could be developed independently. We've consolidated it, came up with master conditions and specifications, and we basically set the template for this is what's going to happen with this property, whether it's today or 10 years or 15, 20 years down the road. So you've got a living document that's enforceable, that's going to be a guide for how this is developed. Otherwise, what would happen is these property owners are going to sell individual parcels, they're going to come in with separate projects, and you get a lot of opportunities really to make the wrong decision, if you will, if you look at it from that standpoint. So what we want to do is provide one big master plan community, a good set of guidelines that the city has looked at pretty arduously. We've agreed to a lot of conditions. What are the benefits of a project like this? Well, a lot of it is open space. Currently, your zoning ordinance doesn't allow open space, or doesn't require open space. We could build almost as many units, but there's no amenities, there's no open space, there's no trails, there's no pocket parks, there's no commercial for that matter. So we're trying to create a sub-community that's going to be to the benefit of Shelby long-term as well. So, and then as well for the grave site, we'd love to talk with Ms. Mintz. And we do, Ms. Arth, to answer your question, we have no intentions to move it. We want to highlight that. Mentally, I've already got some ideas. We talked to the developer that, hey, we want to create this as a park, make it really accessible. We have done a lot of homework. We've sent cultural specialists out there to go look at it. We've checked it. It's good to hear some of the information she gave me, because in the field it does not indicate what she's telling us. So we want to make sure we're protected. But we had them look at the site, identify it, check through historic records. They've actually been on site. We actually looked at other areas of the property to make sure there were no other graves that we could find. There was some discussion about that. So we've done our due diligence homework. But if she has more information about that particular site for the Revolutionary War hero, we'd love to have it and be able to memorialize that for her. So we're very we're very willing to do that. Again, I think there's some legal questions about whether you want to make it a condition. I'm telling you, we'll work with the property owner. We'll make it a good place. So outside of that, I don't really have anything else unless you have questions for me, either now or later in the presentation.
Can the public ask questions?
No questions. Do you have any more?
So that's all I had, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Joe Harris.
Mayor and Council, my name's Joe Harris. I'm the principal owner of R. Joe Harris Associates. We're the engineer, and basically we'll be doing the civil engineering drawings and the rezoning of this property. I live at 2783 Island View Circle in Fort Mill, South Carolina. I really put myself on the agenda to make sure that I was available in case there were questions. I can push myself to the rear of the thing and try to address as many questions as I can. One thing I do want to basically talk about is we did meet with schools very early on. In our experience, the worst thing you can do is go through a rezoning and have someone from the schools pop up late in the process and say, hey, we don't have capacity. The exact verbiage that Dr. Fisher used with us was, we have decreasing enrollment in our schools. That shocked me. I'll be very honest with you. Being in Fort Mill, we're basically a suburb of Charlotte now. In all the municipalities that I work in, I don't think I've ever seen one with a decreasing enrollment. That, as council, would concern me, because what that's telling me is I have an aging population that is not being replenished with young couples having children. What we feel like we've done is given the opportunity for young couples to buy houses. I can tell you from experience of having a 23-year-old who grew up in Fort Mill and now wants to live in Fort Mill, he doesn't have that opportunity. We're trying to give that opportunity for that first-time, second-time buyer, maybe third-time buyer in the Shelby market. Again, the cemetery, we're all for the cemetery and the preservation of it. I don't think I've ever been involved with a project in which we have not treated cemeteries and even pet cemeteries. And I'm not comparing the two, but we even preserved a family's pet cemetery because we felt that was important to that family. So to talk about human remains and someone who sacrificed for our country, I don't think there's any question we want to do the right thing in this situation. I think the real issue is people keep using the word density, and it's high density. It's really not.
Please refrain.
It's 2.3 units per acre. What is a lot is 1,600 units. The way this would typically develop out over time, over 15 years, is once sewer is available to a site, it starts growing off that site. The issue then is the good planning, that you can't do it all at once. So you've got to be ahead of that development. In this situation, we can do good planning because ultimately at the end of the day, we're planning for that growth day one. So we're getting ahead of that with the TIAs and, with the improvements we're proposing on this site, because that is a concern. We have issues if you're familiar in York County, they have Pennies for Progress. Great program. The problem is it's reactive to transportation, to where we feel like we're being proactive by establishing these issues and issues we would create and taking care of those up front. Now, I will be happy to come back and answer any questions. Brandon can also make himself available. I jot things down as we go through. And so if we need to come back up and address anything specific, we'll be happy to do that.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Harris. Karma Edwards.
Good evening. My name is Karma Edwards, and I live at 303 Hidden Creek Drive, Shelby, North Carolina, 28152. So I'm kind of wearing multiple hats with my comments tonight. I'm going to be quite honest. I'm really torn on this development. If you know anything about me, I was born and raised here, lived here until I was about 30 years old, moved away to Florida for 12 years, and recently moved back during the pandemic. And for my job, I am currently a national public health consultant for a chronic disease group in Atlanta, the National Association of Chronic Disease Directors. That's a mouthful. But we work directly with the CDC, so a lot of my consulting work is with the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. One of the projects that I lead and coordinate nationwide for CDC is a project called the Walkability Action Institute. And this project is where we literally help communities across the country put on a course, and I bring the nation's best leaders and experts in all the different disciplines that feed into this design. Those from public health, planning, transportation, elected officials, economic development, land conservation, you name it. I have worked with and personally oversaw the project management for 95 locations out of 34 states in the United States. And the one thing that I've learned is that no matter where we are, what we look like, we're all more alike than we are different. And I say that to you because what I see on the screen is something that Justin knows. I also am on the planning board for the town of Bowling Springs, which is different than Shelby, I realize. What I see here is something that the time I could get behind and support, something that's called active community design, plan development, where you've got sidewalks, you've got buffers, you've got the ramps, you're considering the needs of everybody. And most of the time this works really, really well. I'm not sure that this is going to work really, really well in this location. Since moving back here in 2020, one of the things that I remembered is you don't realize the things you miss until you're back here. And when I lived in Florida for 12 years, I lived in Jacksonville, I've been to Tampa, been all over the country doing this work, and there's so many good things that this can bring about. The problem is that a lot of times you have to consider what I call smart growth development. I personally have relationships with organizations like Tool Design Group, which in my opinion is the top engineering firm in the country doing this work. I have relationships with a group called Smart Growth Development with America Walks. And National Association of Realtors, we bring in real estate development as we're talking about healthy community change and active community design. But then I come to this situation and I'm struggling on this, I'm torn, because I also grew up at 137 Alma Lane, which is a 38-acre, and across the street from that's 37-acre farm that my grandfather worked really, really hard to maintain. And part of that property does butt up on the back end to some of this. And so I am really torn on this. And in thinking about this, I went back and I looked at the definition for what is smart growth development. And the definition is overall approach of development and conservation strategies that help protect our health, our natural environment, and make our community more attractive, economically stronger, socially diverse, and resilient to climate change. This has to take into account the respectable growth, controlled growth, and really hear the people that live here, and not driven by people that don't live here, that have never lived here, that probably won't live here when this is all said and done. The other thing that I always like to think about when I teach and present across the country is something that's called the 3 Ps of placemaking. 3 Ps of affecting people, place, and prosperity. And sometimes it's really hard to lose that because sometimes decisions are made based on prosperity alone, and they're not considering what the people want. And I think tonight this is a forum where people are being heard. And then I question, are they really being heard? Because I'm a biker. I bike a lot on Washburn Switch Road. It pains me to think what this is going to look like when that development's in. As a cyclist, am I even going to be able to use that route? There are a lot of low-income and minority communities that live near Washburn Switch Road, and they're not in here tonight because they probably don't think that the government works for them. They probably don't even know that they could speak up. So there's a bunch of people that's outside of this map that don't have the means or the know-how in how to willingly do this. On any other day, I would be a great partner with you guys. I could help you do this change everywhere. The problem is that you're in TKK and you're in Fort Mill and you're not from Cleveland County, North Carolina. The things that I love about this, I like the active community design. I like that you guys are really looking at preserving the cemetery. I like that there's some conservation things coming in. When you can connect it to a good network of connecting facilities like sidewalks, bike lanes, and trails, and the City of Shelby has done an amazing job at that. I come up here to City of Shelby and I would put it on a national presentation because I'm so proud of how you guys have done the downtown. The problem is this is what I call sort of some sprawl that's taking place between a smaller town and another smaller town. Our infrastructure, in my opinion, and even with your 10-year growth plan, may not be able to accommodate for the extra traffic, the stuff that you're still going to have to find money and designate money for, and this is just not a thriving Charlotte community. And people don't want it to be. I also worry about the number of houses. I would encourage you all, if you've not ridden by, to check out all the new development that's happened between Crest Middle School, Webb Farm Road, up and down Beaver Dam Church Road. People were buying homes that could not maintain those homes. If you're going to bring people in for this 640 residential place, can they afford it? And I can turn my house around right now and sell it for a lot of money, but I could not afford to buy the same house back. This is the problem that we're going to create for people that live in Cleveland County. So when you think about people coming from other places and we really want to draw tourists and people relocating here, that's great, but then it pushes those of us here who are working hard here to stay here out. And to me, that's where you really have to consider the people. So I guess the thing that I would encourage you all to think about, I think I've outlined a lot of things here, but it still has to be respectable growth. And it is a lot of density in one area where we currently don't have the infrastructure to support it. The school infrastructure. Graham School is close to there. Graham School is now closed. DuBois Springs Elementary and Springmore Elementary have the capacity to address, let's say if 1,642 people have 2 or 3 kids, can our schools address that? As a person who regularly goes to Crest High School on Friday nights in the fall, I can tell you the high school and middle school cannot accompany this growth. And so I would just ask you to think long and hard that sometimes we can make decisions that are right and that improve the 3 Ps, the people, the place, and the prosperity. But sometimes it's just the wrong decision. And in Cleveland County for years, things have been built around doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do. And that would be my closing comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lippman. Barbara Sandman.
I'm Barbara Sandman, and I'm from Atlanta, Georgia, but I am a native of Cleveland County. I, too, am a descendant of Martin Elliott. Not quite as many greats as Allison, but I grew up on part of his farm in Upper Cleveland. I just want the graves preserved. All the historical data states that they're buried there, and all the graves should, and I think the graves should be marked and preserved and accessible. They've been there for 300 years. Let's keep them there and keep them accessible. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sandman. Brian Fletcher. Larry Beaver.
I'm Larry Beaver, live at 416 Old Boiling Springs Road, Shelby. A lot has been said of concerns that we have. Of course, one of my biggest concerns, of course, is traffic. I live in Charlotte. I work in Charlotte, so I travel every day. It takes me an hour and 20 minutes to get there, hour and 20 back. So I think when I get through the Ingalls stoplight, I've got it made. No more traffic. So, I think about that. I think about the infrastructure. Of course, it's not there. I think about the bypass and how long we've been working on the bypass, and we have a few miles done. That would help tremendously on the west side, but we don't have that. What funding as far as for Cleveland County Schools? I know you spoke with Fisher and spoke with him, and yeah, he's going to want more kids. I get that. Some have went to charter schools, which pulled away from the public school system. We have mobile units that were set up at Springmore and a couple of other schools that have been removed now. I hated that when my kids went there because I thought it was so unsafe. Put mobile units out there. There's no fencing, nothing surrounding. Anybody could come up when those kids go in and out of that school. And you think about school safety today and what all goes on, that always bothered me anytime I dropped my kids off thinking that they would have to go outside that school to a mobile unit. Speed of cars, up and down our road. I mean, we're constantly dealing with that. It's just more traffic coming in, dealing with that. I think about developments that get started too. I covered Western North Carolina with an equipment company for a while. And a lot of these developments would get started and then they would shut down. There wasn't enough support there. In cases like that, what would happen? If something sells faster, if townhomes were selling faster than residentials, single families, would they start throwing up more townhomes? What would regulate that and keep that from happening? What would control it once they got started in there and got everything approved? What would control changing in that? Like I said, I appreciate the time and appreciate you listening. But like I said, we've had just so much good conversation here. But just think about the people of Shelby and the people of Cleveland County.
Thank you, Mr. Beaver. Stephen Bridges.
Stephen Bridges. I own land on Lackey Street that butts up to the First Broad River. Unfortunately, it's some land that y'all intend to send the trail through. My concern about the trail, because of my job, I work in Blacksburg and Earl. I see the kind of traffic that walks this trail. That's the trail y'all want to connect to that.
Mr. Bridges, let me make sure, are you speaking on the matter that we're the Blanton Farm property?
Yes, well, that's what I signed up for, but yeah, the part of the property and the trail, both together, yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, the trail, the concern of mine is the safety of the trail, because I've seen the kind of people that do walk this trail. It is used by families, it is used by people in our community, but it also has a lot of dangerous things on that trail. I've seen it many times. I worry about that because the land that I own, I don't feel like I can allow my children to get out on that land because I don't know who's going to trespass off of that trail. That scares me. Secondly, as an avid hunter, to see 800 acres of habitat disappear for our wildlife, to me, that worries me. We are lucky to be able to hunt and fish. That's something that's been passed down to us. When you develop land like this takes it away from us. The amount of wildlife that will disappear because of that, I don't really know. I hope y'all take that into effect because you have a lot of people that enjoy doing that in our community. But that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Bridges. Laurel Carte. I apologize if I got the name wrong. Laurel, 445 Webb Road. Hello? She's coming. Okay.
My name is Laurel Carl. I'm at 445 Webb Road in Shelby. I am fairly new to the area. I'm a transplant from the goldfish bowl that we call California. And I have seen this more times than I can count. I was ecstatic when we moved here, and I saw all the green spaces and the forests and just all the open area. I love my house where I live, right off of Old Boiling Springs Road. I do everything I can to avoid 74. I have found multiple ways to get around it. I hate that traffic. It's only going to get worse. The last gentleman brought up the thing about the wildlife. That also concerns me. That's a lot of deer, whatever lives in there, and the people that do hunt and enjoy that, where are those animals going to go? I realize nobody really cares too much about that, but they don't think about that. I've seen a kind of development. I've seen, anyway, California is known for the urban sprawl. You have cities that one bleeds into another. You don't know where one begins and one ends. And that's what I'm afraid is going to happen here. We're going to have, it all bleeds together. We're going to be one big Charlotte. Do we want that? I don't. And I didn't come here for that. I came here to just enjoy the small space, the small town feel. It's exactly what I wanted. I had to escape California. I'm one of those people. But I'm afraid that this is going to bring a lot of unwanted stuff that comes with it. And this is a huge concern. And where I live, right on this road, I'm already thinking about where can I move to next, because this is not something that I want to see. I've already seen some of these new developments. There's one over by Pinnacle. Those houses are still empty, most of them. A lot of them are still empty. I don't know where you think these people are coming from, but eventually when they get here, they may not be the kind of people that you're thinking of. So, thank you.
Thank you. We have no one else signed up, so I'll close the public hearing at 7:12. Council, we are now in our deliberation phase of this hearing, or of this matter. I would just open the floor up for any more questions or thoughts that you might have. I would like to just say this to the members of the public. First of all, I want to thank everyone who came up and spoke tonight. We hear you loud and clear. I can assure you that our city staff, our city council, has been thinking about this and has been losing a little sleep over it, because I can only speak for myself here, but I grew up here in Shelby too. I love Shelby as much as the next person. And one of the things, though, that I'm very proud of about our city is our city staff takes a lot of time looking at these proposals. They've met with this developer, asked a lot of hard questions. So I can assure you, whatever we do tonight or whatever we do with this matter, it will be after a lot of thought and a lot of passion. And we share your passion for Shelby and for the concerns that you have. So I do want you to know that you have been heard. We hear you, and we want to continue to hear you anytime anything like this comes up in the future. So I would just kind of open the floor up for any of the council members who'd like to say something. Ms. Arthur.
I did have something I just wanted to mention. We are facing the big development coming up behind Jefferson Elementary that was rezoned 20 years ago that we had no control over that being rezoned. And, we all know there's going to be a lot of units in that area, bringing, a huge impact on our schools. And it's just, I wonder how we handled that plus this. That one we didn't get to decide on, but this one we do. And it is a lot. And it just came to my mind when people were mentioning the potential impact on our, schools and infrastructure. I'm happy to hear that the developer spoke to Dr. Fisher and I trust him, and if he said that he's not concerned, that is reassuring. It's just, still.
Anyone else?
I think I've asked this question previously, but I'll ask it again. Under the current zoning, the density, how would that compare with the proposed rezoning? What would be the difference? I think I've had that question answered, but just for clarity.
So basically, what is it current, Mr. Longino, can you, or Mr. Howell, I think the question is currently zoned R20, and what will with this change, what could they do with the property as it currently is zoned?
So it's currently zoned R20. It could be developed as residential. I think the important thing to note is R20 is just R20 as it is in our Unified Development Ordinance. So if they wanted to come in and develop it that way, they could, but we wouldn't have the 19 pages of conditions and the subset of those that go along with that. So it could be.
Please, no questions from the audience. I'm sorry.
That's right. No.
So, saying right, so if the zoning didn't change and remained R20, they would still be able to come in and develop, but we wouldn't be able to hold them to all of these conditions about trails and the little parks and
That's correct.
Sidewalks and all the things that they have agreed to because it's conditional zoning.
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
Right.
the regular zoning development of it would just have our standard specs. It wouldn't have any of the additional stuff. That's what
Right.
And so compared to the density now as it sits versus the change, and this might take some math and you might not can do this right now, for the entire property, what would be the difference? Like how many homes could they have now versus with the change?
I don't know that
So
math
say
off the
that-
top
that
of my
might be-
head, but R20 allows for more density, but it's going to go back to this slide here. So R20 allows for, I'm not exactly sure, but like 2-acre lots. So if you have 2-acre lots in R20, but you have a conditional district that's utilizing this cluster development, the density of this development is 2.36 units per acre. So whether you put those houses on 2-acre lots or you cluster them together and put 4 houses on 2 acres, it's the same density in the eyes of our development ordinance.
All right.
You need to get them.
All right, I'm going to have to ask you to please refrain from outbursts of comments. I'm going to have to ask you to leave if we have to keep this up, so please refrain.
But the density of R20 is 2.19 units per acre, actually. So we'd use that calculation for this. And again, whether you put them on bigger lots or you put them on smaller lots, in the eyes of the UDO, the density is calculated total acreage over number of lots. So
Okay, so it's already zoned for 2.19, and the change makes it 2.36.
yes, ma'am. The way it's arranged on there with the topography and everything still keeps it at 2.36.
Okay.
So you would be looking at a very similar amount of houses if they never came to us.
Correct.
Can you elaborate, and maybe Mr. Yarborough's here, our city engineer, about the traffic pattern? Go back to the slide about the traffic, because I've heard a lot of comments about the traffic. Can you go into a little more detail, at least in terms of what the numbers are on some of that, just to refresh my memory?
I can if Mr. Yarborough wants to make his way up.
Mr.
Here.
Yarborough,
I'll try and cover it as best I can. So, just to give sort of an overview here, RJH worked with Kimley Horn, who would be an independent engineering firm that came out and looked at the number of trips per day and the existing traffic already there, and then did modeling to project what the traffic would be from this development, and came up with these different recommendations for those improvements. It's a good question, and I think it warrants that answer. But I do want to say that this is a zoning decision only. So the traffic impact analysis is really sort of separate from that. But we wanted to show this, that we've been trying to plan for those additional things that are coming.
Yes, the traffic impact analysis
is something that's been coordinated between North Carolina Department of Transportation and the City of Shelby. Their traffic congestion management unit has been heavily involved in this. And going through that, from some of the early discussions, there were 20 intersections that were analyzed. So go and pull the traffic data from the area, look at the number of homes, the traffic generation from that, the traffic generation from the commercial and the industrial properties. And as shown on the map, it is sort of hard to see here. Well, everything that's shown in red, though, is a change. So on Highway 226, for example, as you're traveling south on 226 and going to turn left onto West Dixon Boulevard, dual turn lanes there. To where the queue now stacks back past Ingalls, dual lanes there. Once again, dual lanes turning off of West Dixon Boulevard onto 226 going north. And so there are many, many changes here. Old Bowling Springs Road, which everyone knows is a dangerous intersection as it sits now. That's one that DOT has been involved with for years with us. And looking there, once again, dual turn lanes coming off of 74 to get traffic off of there, but then having a signal for the traffic coming off of Old Bowling Springs Road as you're making a left off of Old Bowling Springs going to 74 traveling west. Having a turn lane there. And so with this, as mentioned earlier, there's 4 signalized intersections with, for example, here on the industrial area, a designated right turn lane. So there's been a lot of time. One thing worth mentioning is this is under review. It still has not been finalized by North Carolina Department of Transportation. Very, very minor comments on it. Part of the conditional zoning package, as mentioned earlier, is that the developer will make all the improvements at the developer's expense. So there will be substantial roadway improvements here based on the engineering data and traffic counts that have been completed.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you. Go ahead, Ms. Arthur.
I know that we don't generally address, and during the public comment, we don't respond, but I had read in here earlier and did want to read this little tiny bit of text here. Upon City Council approval of the proposed conditional zoning district and upon written agreement by the developer, any future changes that constitute major change from the agreement must be resubmitted by the developer to council for future approval. So the person that had mentioned that if one type of house was selling well and they wanted to just stop building, the variety of housing and switch to all of a different kind, that's a substantial change that would have to come before us since this is conditional zoning, correct?
That's correct. So
Okay.
statutorily, as well
Good.
as our code, requires that any major change, which in this case, say, for example, density, where you took single-family detached to townhomes, would not be able to be done unilaterally. That's a major change. It's an increase in density, and so that would have to be renegotiated, and we have no obligation to say yes. If they conversely went townhomes to single-family, that's a decrease in density, so that is not counts as a major change. That's a minor modification technically, and so that could be seen as beneficial, but otherwise, yes, a major change would have to be renegotiated.
They would have to come back before the council.
Yeah.
That's correct.
I had read that.
The whole process, not just council, but planning.
Okay.
Right, I understand that.
I had that understanding and wanted to make sure that the audience had that understanding as well.
Right. Okay.
I have something.
Go ahead.
So several people talked about like police and fire. Can you guys speak to that a little bit about
Mr. Howell, you
the
want to address that?
understaffed comment? Or?
Yeah, we're definitely not understaffed. I'm not sure where that information came from, but we're definitely not understaffed. We staff our police department at a much higher per capita rate than a lot of bigger cities when you really look at it. We have had vacancies, certainly, as most employers have, but I think we're pretty close to full staff now, although we do have some cadets, I think, in the BLET. So whenever we have development come, especially if it's substantial development, and of course this is much larger than anything we've seen in Shelby in decades, of course. and the concerns are certainly well stated, and certainly respect the concerns that people have. But we don't just put this stuff on paper and bring it to council. One of the first things we always do is we take a look at what impact this growth will have on the city's ability to provide services at this time and subsequently in the future. Taking into consideration that this is a 10-year build-out, that could be affected by the market. It could happen theoretically, I guess, in 3 years, 10 years, 12 years, 15 years. We don't know. We don't know what the market's going to do. But we do take a look at what impact it's going to have on the sewer collection system, on the water system, on the fire department in terms of response times, on the police department, on our public works department in terms of trash collection, solid waste collection, yard waste collection, those things. We do take a look at that, and staff discusses that extensively, looking at what capacity we have within the system now versus what we're going to need. We can't possibly ever build capacity within those services to address a development like this. We'd be sitting on equipment we wouldn't need for years. So a certain amount of that has to be done as the growth occurs. Vehicles purchased, people hired to deal with things as they occur. But as we look at the development as it's proposed and the rough schedule of development, and again, the market's going to dictate that, we don't have any overreaching concerns that we would be able to serve. Could growth, the pace of growth, impact that? It absolutely could. But that's not something that is unique to Shelby or any other community for that matter. There are communities growing significantly in North Carolina. You know, the estimates are somewhere between 120 and 150,000 people per year, maybe higher than that come here, and communities have to deal with that. And we're no different. I think it would be an overreach for me to say, oh no, it's not a problem. At the pace that we feel like the market's at this point in time, we believe we can handle it. We have capacity. That's not to say that we won't be coming back to council and saying, hey, we have to buy another trash truck or a grapple truck or another fire truck or whatever it may be. As you all know, we have a 4th fire station planned for the Washburn Switch industrial area that would likely serve this area. That has yet to be determined. We've done the study initially. So definitively, we certainly can handle it at the pace that we have been told the market is at and what we've observed, but that certainly could change as well. So I hope I answered your question.
Yes, thank you.
I would just like to add, and thank you, City Manager, for providing that information. I think that, and the City Manager pretty well explained that, and I recall being back in the early 90s, and some of you out there probably live in those communities that were developed back in the 90s. I can recall when Shelby was just the city limits was a big round circle like a basketball. And some of the same concerns when we began to develop and annex and bring them into the city, we heard those same concerns. Overcrowdedness, traffic problems, you can't provide the infrastructure, you don't have a policeman, you don't have a fireman, you don't have the sanitation department. But that's already been taken into consideration. And if, by some chance, the developers renege or change their mind and want to do something different from what's been planned and approved, it won't happen. It won't happen. And we're a growing city. We are a growing city. And I thank you, Mr. Manager, for providing that information for the council members that was unaware that that's the process, and that's how we do it. Thank you.
Mr. Hopper. All right, council, you do have an ordinance that's been prepared on this matter, so I think it's at this point we need to decide what we're going to do, whether we're going to vote on it, whether we're going to table it, whether we're going to take action.
And Mr. Mayor, if there is a motion and it just needs to have consistency or inconsistency and reasonableness by statute.
Consistency and reasonableness.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, I would like to make a motion that we approve ordinance number 2-2024. And the reason is that it's consistent with the surrounding land use and the master plan for the city of Shelby.
All right, I have a motion from Mr. Cosby with his statement of reasonableness and consistency. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those please vote, raising your right hand. In favor? We have 1, 2, 3 in favor. All those opposed? 2 opposed. The motion passed by 3-2. All right. Thank you for everyone for coming out on this matter. Next item is consideration of a resolution granting a special use permit to Caleb Peeler, parcel number 60931. Mr. Longino.
Thank you, sir. So this is a request for a townhome development at South Post and Joe's Lake Road. I've got a map to orient you here in just a second. But our UDO specifies that a townhome development with more than 25 units requires a special use permit from the City Council. So because of that, this will be a quasi-judicial hearing, which I have some sort of an overview of a quasi-judicial hearing, but I'm definitely going to kick it to the city attorney if there's any specific questions. So the purpose of a quasi-judicial hearing is really to gather evidence in a fair manner to determine the facts of a case or request. In the case of a special use permit, the ordinance allows for the requested use so long as certain conditions are met. So the hearing that will be held will be an evidentiary hearing. It requires City Council to observe certain procedural requirements, similar to the Board of Adjustment, if you all have experience with that. But there are some regulations and rules around that, which again I can let the city attorney explain. But witnesses will need to be sworn in, and their comments will be testimony. Evidence must be trustworthy and reliable from a non-expert that can be trustworthy and reliable. Also, there can be expert testimony, which would be someone with specific knowledge or specialty in sort of the area being presented. The vote must consider proper evidence and findings of fact.
Yeah, excuse me. Can we close the lobby door so that folks can... Thank you.
So again, as we get to the hearing, I'll let Mr. Lunsford explain any of the specifics of it. But just very quickly, the request is, as I mentioned, here on the corner of South Post and Joe's Lake Road. We have Pinnacle Crossing. The current zoning is ROCU. And again, it is being requested to be developed as a townhome development. The future land use plan shows this as commercial, so it would be inconsistent with that, but we've obviously seen a lot of housing development in this area, so it would be consistent with that development. So this is an overview of the plan. You should have a picture in your packets if that's a little hard to read. But as I mentioned, they're proposing a townhome community consisting of up to 81 townhomes across 15 buildings, about 4 to 6 units per building. And the site area is 9.18 acres. I'm sorry, the existing zoning is GB. I think I misspoke on the previous slide. Property is currently vacant, though. It's undeveloped.
It would be GB to what?
GB2. I'm sorry, I don't have that page in front of me. It's
the proposed zoning is GB, is it not?
No, that's the existing.
Existing zoning is GB.
Well, but packet.
No, the surrounding zone is GB too. See you.
This is a by right use. There's no proposed change to zoning. This is just a special use permit that
That's correct. Thank you, Mr. Peeler. So GB allows for residential development. So because of the 25 or greater units, that's why we're here hearing the special use permit. I apologize for that.
All right. Mr. Lunsford, can you, we're getting ready to go into a quasi-judicial hearing. Can you outline for the council how we need to hear the information that we're to receive tonight?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. So there will be testimony as far as the request, the nature of the request. Everyone who does testify will be sworn in. Their testimony will be under oath for that purpose, as the evidence needs to be trustworthy. Then, based on that information, they'll have the opportunity for expert testimony and presentation. Information such as traffic impact analysis, the cost of or change to neighborhood pricing or the housing market, that all calls for expert testimony, not layperson testimony. This is very much like a traditional court hearing. However, layperson testimony can be given as well as hearsay from that layperson, meaning a non-expert. And so hearsay, its own weight that you should consider, and that it's not direct from the person. It is hearsay, meaning it's not under oath from that person saying it. That's what constitutes it as hearsay. At the end of listening to both the proponent, so the person who's asking for the special use permit, and then any citizens opposed, you have to decide whether or not the information submitted was sufficient information. If the proponents do not provide sufficient information, and the proponent, or rather, if the proponent provides sufficient information and those opposed do not, then by default it must be granted as a special use.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Lunsford. Everybody clear on that? So we're to hear the information based on the information that we've heard, based on the information that's been submitted to us, and make a decision based on that information. So at this time, anyone who is going to speak, and I have two names that have signed up, Doug McVie and Kayla Peeler, need to come up and be sworn in. And the clerk will swear you in, or affirm. All right, Mr. McVie, I think you're the first one. Doug McVie, if you would state your name and address.
Yeah, Doug McVie. Address is 212 Lake Georgia Drive here in Shelby.
Okay.
I'm just a little confused. So is this kind of like public comment?
Well, it's not public comment. We're here to hear any information that you can have to provide to us on this specific issue.
Is it kind of like what we just did on the Blanton Farm thing, or just totally different? I'm just kind of confused on what.
Well,
I
you
signed up
signed
just
up.
for public comment.
This is not public comment. You signed up to speak on the matter of the parcel number 60931 at the corner of South Post Road and Judge Lake Road.
Yeah, that's not what I had intended to do. So.
Okay. Well, thank you. If you have public comment, come back to a future meeting, and we'd love to hear from you.
Mr. Mayor, just a point of order. Mr. Longino needs to be sworn in as well.
Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Longino?
Thank you.
All right. Kayla Peeler?
Good evening. Thank you for your time. I'll be brief. The purpose of this special use permit is to review a proposed residential townhome development on a piece of land that was my grandfather's land. It's the remaining parcel in the 2006 Hallelujah Acres development that was never completed. I'll briefly read over my statement of reasonableness that I provided to the council. This plan is consistent with the surrounding area. The townhome development will be similar in density to the residential developments of Pinnacle Estates and Kingsview, and will also allow buildings with a similar size and residential use to those in the surrounding areas. This project is consistent with the future land use plan, showing this as a high-density community consistent with the commercial/residential high-density development designated in the plan. Additionally, the public sidewalks proposed for this project will be a key connection between the sidewalks along Joes Lake Road and the proposed greenway connection along Earl Road. This proposed development also matches the original 2006 approved master plan for the previous Hallelujah Acres development. This project provides a number of benefits to the community. It will provide much-needed housing along with opportunities for local businesses and employers, as well as remote workers, and increase the city tax base. The planned road connections, sidewalk connections, and street buffer areas will connect the adjacent Pinnacle Estates neighborhood to the adjacent Kingsview neighborhood and create a well-knit community for City of Pleasant living. The relationship to the proposed development to currently allowed development is currently Zone GB, which allows for the townhome use. However, it requires a special use permit for developments over 25 units. Therefore, since we have 81 units, we're here today. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. All right, I will close the public hearing. I don't know that I gave you a time, but we'll close the public hearing at 7:41. All right, council, we're in the discussion phase at this point on this matter. As the city attorney has spelled out, you need to base your decision on the evidence that's been submitted. Evidence showing that upon granting the special use permit that it will not endanger the public health or safety, will not injure the value of adjoining or abutting property, will be in harmony with the area in which it's located, and or will be in conformity with the land development plan, thoroughfare plan, or other plan officially adopted by the council. So in your motion, if you choose to make the motion, you need to make a statement of reasonableness or a statement of that it complies with the evidence that's been submitted.
I make a motion that we approve this. We were not presented with any evidence to the contrary, and I believe that it will not endanger the public health or safety, will not injure the value of adjoining or abutting properties, will be in harmony with the area in which it is located, and will be in conformity with the land development plan, thoroughfare plan, or other plan officially adopted by City Council.
All right, I have a motion from Ms. Arth with those statement of the evidence that's been submitted. So that is a motion for resolution number 1-2024.
Yep.
That is your motion. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please raise your right hand. And it's unanimous. Thank you. Mr. Howe, can we ask, I think there's a lot of people still in the lobby, if they could move to the outside.
Certainly.
There's a lot of noise coming through that
They did get quieter, though, at least.
okay, that's better. I think they're going to move it.
I think there's an officer back there.
Next item on our agenda is our consent agenda, and I will read these for the record. One is approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of December 4th. Number 2 is adoption of a budget ordinance amendment for the City of Shelby City Park Pool Renovation Project. Number 3 is approval of a resolution accepting a dedication of land for new location of County Home Road. Number 4 is an underground electric installation project. Number 5 is an underground electric installation projects. Number 6 is Seattle Crossing Subdivision Underground Electric Installation Project. Number 7 is approval of a resolution approving a financing agreement authorized by the North Carolina General Statute 160A-20. Number 8 is City of Shelby FY 2023-24 Budget Ordinance Amendment. Number 9 is a approval of a resolution in order to accept a memorial commemorating the 50 greatest men's basketball players of Cleveland County at the Holly Oak Park Gymnasium. Number 10 is recognition of Beth Bean, Finance Director in the City of Shelby's Finance Department, as recipients of the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting awarded by the Government Finance Officers Association. And number 11 are the management reports from staff.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I would make a motion that we accept our consent agenda.
I have a motion from Mr. Hopper to adopt the consent agenda as submitted. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please raise your right hand. It's unanimous. Thank you. We are down to unfinished business, and we have none. We're down to new business. This first item is approval of a resolution giving preliminary approval for the issuance of multifamily housing revenue bonds to finance the acquisition, rehabilitation, and equipping of Laurel Hill Apartments. Mr. Howell, are you going to introduce this? Or Mr.
Yes, sir. Council, you have before you a preliminary resolution that would give approval for the issuance of multifamily housing revenue bonds. Now, to kind of back up and to give you some context, the Laurel Hill Apartments are a privately owned apartment complex that is considered affordable housing, in that there are subsidies, either Section 8 vouchers or the like, that those residents qualify for. We have been approached by an affordable housing developer who is looking to purchase the Laurel Hill Apartments and to reinvest $10 million in those apartments. The reason they're coming to the city is that as an affordable housing developer, they can and have the ability to take advantage of tax-exempt financing, and which would make this project more affordable and more doable for the developer. If City Council is amenable, this is the first step. The city attorney, and I'll let him speak in just a minute, the city essentially acts as a conduit, allowing the developer, purchaser of the property in this situation, to purchase the property and renovate those property using tax-exempt bonds, which buys down the cost. Mr. Lunsford, I'm going to let you comment further.
So in order to take advantage of that tax-exempt status, it has to come through a government entity. In this case, the city is the government entity. This process is known as conduit bond issuance, where we are literally doing nothing in terms of our risk as the city or the entity, other than putting our name on the bonds. So we have no financial risk at all. We are just simply saying we will put our name on the bond, let you issue the bond, collect the revenue for your development for the benefit of the development, being that it's low-income housing, and make those improvements, and then the developer would get whatever funds are actually granted. Now, they're seeking $10 million. Hopefully they can get what they're seeking, but it's not a mandate that they actually get that amount of money. Worst case scenario, if something were to happen, the city is not at all liable whatsoever. We are, again, just simply allowing for the issuance of those tax-exempt bonds because we are the government entity. This is a requirement through the IRS. It's within the code. This particular stage is just allowing us to say we'll do it as a city for the purpose of the developer, then to proceed with the paperwork that's required on them for both the state and for federal purposes. In the event that we say yes, or you all vote affirmatively for that, then there'll be additional processes that will happen, and one of those mandates through the IRS is a public hearing with 45-day notice. There is actual separate bond counsel through McGuire Woods who has been hired and contracted for the purpose of this, and that bond counsel prepared the resolution before you, and then they will be responsible for future resolutions and notice, and that is not at a cost to us. That is a cost incurred by the developer. So all of the notice requirements and further drafting will actually happen through that separate bond counsel that will work basically as an intermediary. And we will have no real loss in terms of my work being derailed or devoted heavily to this. That's not the case. It's all going to be Some involvement by staff, sure, but the actual collection and then benefit and then distribution is not really going to be staff involvement. So that's how the process is designed.
So also just to comment that the advantage to the city allowing and participating is the reinvestment in funding in an already existing affordable housing project that is in bad need of reinvestment. So better quality housing as well as addition to the tax base, because this is a taxable property.
Good. All right. Have any questions?
I do.
Council, you do have
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
They wouldn't be able to, or would we have no authority over this? They wouldn't be able to, like, fix it up and then change it into not affordable housing, would they?
No, they would.
Okay.
They would have to comply with HUD regulations, because some other things that have to happen is they have to make application to the North Carolina Housing Finance Agency, which issues those tax exempt credits for the state for affordable housing. So they have to apply and get approval, and then they also have to undergo HUD inspections, and then if they qualify for tax exempt financing, which in this case they should, it would have to be maintained as affordable housing for a specified number of years. And I'm sorry, I don't know the number of years it would have to.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate you answering that question.
And the reason why they're coming to us again is because we've run the housing authority. If the housing authority were separate, then we wouldn't, as a council, be directly involved. It would be through the housing authority. But since we run both, that's why it's going through council. And there are local cities that have done this as well, and I've reached out and we've had conversations about this process.
No, I think it's good to reinvest in those properties.
Yeah, it's good. All right, Council. Chair will entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, as the first manager of this apartment complex back in 1974,
Awesome.
I move that we adopt Resolution 8-2024.
Wow, that's impressive. All right, we have a motion from Mr. Weber to adopt Resolution number 8-2024. All those in favor of the motion, please raise your right hand. It's unanimous. Thank you. That's interesting. Know that.
I'm old.
You're not as old as I am.
A long time ago, Mr. Weber. All right, next item on our agenda is approval of a resolution authorizing execution of a pre-development agreement for redevelopment of historic Webley. Mr. Howell?
Yes, sir. Council, you have before you a resolution, and to give you a little background, before I go on to the resolution. Council, you're all aware that the city received a directed grant through the state budget at the request of Senator Alexander for funding that would be targeted towards the acquisition and historic restoration of Governor Omax Gardner's former home. This is a task that Council at some point in time agreed to take on. We have received notification from the state of the grant. We are working through that process now. We do still have to refine the scope of the actual project, which we're working on. I don't need to tell you that your staff has its hands full right now, and that we oftentimes need to have outside assistance and consulting of experts. In this situation, I believe that contracting with Development Finance Initiative at UNC Chapel Hill School of Government is the right step for us to help us take a step back, take a look. Some of the questions that you have asked me and that I've asked myself was, what are we going to do with the property when it's restored? What's the public use? Is there a potential public-private partnership? Is there a potential private use? Can we transfer the property once it's been restored? Can we sell it? There are lots of questions that still have to be answered. I think DFI can help us go through that process, and similar to what they did with the Charles Hotel. So this resolution will essentially authorize an agreement with DFI, but in a different capacity, working with the Webley property.
All right, everybody clear? All right, any questions, comments, or the chair will entertain a motion to move forward on this?
Mr. Mayor, I'd make a motion that we adopt Resolution 9-2024.
Have a motion from Mr. Hopper to adopt Resolution number 9-2024. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please raise your right hand. Unanimous. Thank you. We're down to City Manager's report. Mr. Howell?
Yes, sir. A number of things just need to bring to your attention, and I'll hit on them at a high level. The closing on the property purchased by the city at 607 West Grover Street, that's the former Fox Distributing building, has taken place, so the city does now own that property. It will certainly go to serve the needs of the city in the future in terms of expansion of the water plant when that becomes necessary. In the interim, it'll be used by a number of utility departments for storage and other uses, maintenance as well. Also, the RAISE grant application, that's the US DOT program for transportation grants that we have applied for the previous 4 years for the remainder of the rail trail. We are working on that grant application, and we'll resubmit that and hopefully find out sometime this summer if we're funded again. So we have taken some extra steps to evaluate our benefit cost analysis using an outside economist that was supplied by DOT. We still don't have those comments back yet, but we continue to work on them. As you all know, the last 3 years we've scored very high. We've been a highly recommended project 3 consecutive times. We've improved our scoring each time. Unfortunately, at a certain point, it just really does become, what can they find wrong with your application? And it gets down to really some very specific things that we have to work on. And there's only so much money to go around, just to be honest. So we have got to be on our toes, which I think we have been, especially the last 3 years. We've submitted a good application. So it's a very competitive situation. We're hopeful we can bring it home this time. As you will remember, it's a $20 million grant that would allow the completion of the rail trail all the way to the South Carolina line through the towns of Patterson Springs and Earl and other parts of the county. So we continue to work on that, and we are going to be using the services of Withers Ravenel and Alice Briggs, who is their grant writer, who's done a fantastic job for us on a number of grants in the past. Also, the Depot Park and the section of rail trail engineering design is getting close on that. I hope to have that to you sometime in February to get it out to bid. That's the time frame we're shooting for right now. Your retreat, as a reminder, is January 27th at the Earl Scruggs Center. I will be sending you a draft council agenda. I will tell you that we will hear fewer reports and there'll be more time for council discussion. Last year we got cut short, so we're going to try to keep it at a very high level and be able to get you some time for discussions of future plans and goals and objectives. The County Home Road project is going to be moving forward. I think sometime towards the end of January we'll see something begin to happen out there, and hopefully by May we'll be done. I'm going to ask the city attorney if he would. You have previously had communications regarding the waiver of liens. As you know, we put a number of liens on properties over the years where we've torn down dilapidated homes that have not met minimum housing code, or we have been forced to cut grass that a property owner has refused to cut, or move a junk car, or clean up a lot because it has violated the nuisance code. We were asked to look into this. I did ask the city attorney to look into it. He's going to tell you what he found.
Thank you, Mr. Howell. So when a structure is torn down, such as a dilapidated home that's causing a public nuisance, a safety nuisance, that's covered under 160A-193, and then the abatement of that structure becomes a tax lien. That tax lien has a certain priority, and that is attached to the property itself, and it's also governed through the county. North Carolina law precludes a municipality from foregoing a tax lien. We don't have the authority to do anything but have it assessed. And for obvious reasons, we have to move forward with the assessing of the lien, but we can't then forgive the lien. And that is regulated by the state, section 105-380. And so once the lien's attached, unless the property is sold and purchased by that particular person at county auction for less than the cost of the lien, there's really no way to get around that. And if the county is going to sell it, they have the opportunity to set a price, and they can set the price at the minimum of whatever encumbrance is on it, and so that the county also doesn't take a loss. But we have no authority to change anything or to undo that.
So let me give you some context on the situation.
Yes, please.
As an example, there are lots where there are taxes owed to both the city and the county, but there are also liens that the city has placed on that property. Those liens sometimes can be pretty substantial, especially when we've had to tear a home down. It may have cost us $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 to tear the home down. And in most cases, as you all know, those homes that are torn down are so far gone that they really couldn't be saved. They violate the minimum housing code. It's typical. So in some situations, you have the county holding properties that someone has stopped paying taxes on, and you have parties that are interested in those lots. The parties can satisfy the liens, the tax liens, and they typically are very low because the lots are vacant. The homes previously were typically in challenged neighborhoods economically, so overall the tax liens are relatively low. What stands out is that a lot of times the rest of the liens, the nuisance liens, the minimum housing code liens are substantial, which makes the lot not affordable or makes a person not interested because they would have to pay too much for the lot to do anything with it. It wouldn't make economic sense in some cases. As the attorney said, the city, because you spent public tax dollars on that, the city council does not have the authority just to say, we're going to make this all go away and we're just going to let you pay the taxes on it and you can have the lot. It took us a while to get you that answer, but we did ask for some extensive research to make sure that either council had the authority or did not have the authority to do so. So in a situation as the one that has come about, there are some options, I think, that we could look at. If we have someone who's interested in a lot and there are back taxes owed and the city is owed liens, the city could then acquire the lot and in turn turn around and sell it to try and recoup as much as you possibly could with some conditions. A home be built on the property so that the taxpayers do benefit from new taxes, new utility customers. Those are not easy things to do, but in this situation, unfortunately, you don't have the authority to waive the lien, and so it puts the lot in limbo because who in their right mind is going to go and some of these lots are very, very small lots, 6,000 and 8,000 square foot lots in some of the old mill villages, but who in their right mind is going to go and pay nominal taxes, but then pay $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 in liens for that lot in some of those areas. So that's the challenge. I think we possibly could come up with some solutions that would address that. As you all know, we own a number of lots that have either been donated to the city or that the city has purchased at auction or been given to us by somebody. So I don't think that it's out of the question we can find a solution to the problem, but the solution cannot be a waiver of those liens by council. I've just got a few more things.
Go ahead.
I also want to make you aware of, and I think you all are aware of this by now, is we have had some difficulties with our outage management system specific to the electric department. Number one, I apologize. I've apologized to a number of citizens about that. We've had a fairly significant failure of the outage management system and the server that provides that. So when someone goes online or on their smartphone to report an outage, oftentimes the system has been down, and it's been down because the server's not been functioning properly. We have put a new server in place, a different type of server with a different operating system that we believe will make that much better. So we're looking at some heavy rain coming in, and that always brings some trees that will hit power lines. And so we're hopeful that this is going to be the fix for that. If not, we're going to continue to plug away at it. But I did want to make you aware of that. And then just a few other things. The mayor spoke to it earlier that we had a sort of a mini flood in council chambers with a water line that broke in the ceiling of the men's bathroom that leached into council chambers and saturated the carpet. And I know you all love that blue carpet. It was something you really, really loved. We saved a piece for each of you to make a Christmas ornament out of. But we will be working to try to get you back in council chambers. What I do hope to do and would love to hear from you about is one of the things I do hear is complaints and gripings generally about the technology in council chambers. I would like to take this opportunity to upgrade the sound system, the video camera system, as well as our other technology. And I would love to hear from you about that as well. And then also, lastly, and not leastly, the Essentials in Municipal Government. You all are familiar with that. That is a program that's offered by the North Carolina League of Municipalities in conjunction with the UNC School of Government. It is kind of boot camp for council members, but it is not exclusive to rookies or new council members. It is something that I think even veteran council members can learn some good things. So there is and I had the dates in front of me, and I'll bet you that
15th, 16th.
15th and 16th of February in Asheville. Mr. Hopper's already let me know he's going, if he can. I hope he still can. I would encourage some of you, if you can go, to go, because there's always new material. And lastly, you do have 2 hours of required ethics training by state statute, and by attending the 2-day session, you can meet that required ethics training.
So we just
and I would just add to the manager's comment. There's always something when you go to those meetings that you can learn new because you've been there before. It's always something you can learn new.
Right.
Because laws change, policies change, and so
yeah, it's good stuff.
that's the reason why I went ahead and signed up.
So do we need to let
Mayor?
Go ahead, Mr. Weber.
What days?
15th and 16th of
Not
February.
the date, but the day.
Do you know the day of the week?
Yeah, the day of the
Carol,
week.
anybody have the day of the week of that? 15th, 16th?
I think it's a Wednesday,
Probably
Thursday.
a Wednesday.
Oh, okay.
It's middle of the week.
But I assume we can go up and back.
It's a Thursday.
It's all
Well, I think if you're going to go, you might want to stay the night because they start early.
Okay. All right.
But if you would, let us know ASAP before those classes fill
Okay.
up.
It's a Thursday, Friday.
Thursday, Friday.
Thursday, Friday. Okay.
Thank you, Pilot.
Is that all you have, Mr. Howell?
Yes, sir.
All right. We are down to council announcements and remarks. And I would just like to remind everybody, coming up this weekend, there's several events around the Martin Luther King weekend. The Cleveland County Branch NAACP have a banquet at the LeGrand Center, and also that same night there is a concert at Malcolm Brown for the Remembering Earl benefit concert. Be kind of hard. You're going to probably have to go late or go early to one of them, and if you're going to try to do both of them. But I do hope that you'll try to take advantage of one of those. And then on Monday, there'll be the event down at Malcolm Brown. On Monday, the usual event that they have.
And down at Malcolm Brown Auditorium.
Yeah, down at Brown Auditorium. So I would encourage you to participate in that, which I think we've generally had a good turnout for Monday. That's all I've got. I'll just go around the horn here. Ms. Bullock, do you have anything?
I'm good tonight, thank you.
Good.
We too.
Good. Crosby, Weber?
I'm good. Thank you.
Good. Everybody's good. All right. We do have, next item is our closed session, and this is to discuss matters relating to location or expansion of industries or other businesses in areas served by the public, and including a tentative list of economic development incentives that may be offered by the public body in negotiations pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 143, 318.11A4. Mr. Lunsford, is that sufficient reason for us to go into closed session?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Under the advice of our legal counsel, we may go under closed session. Chair will entertain a motion that we go into closed session.
I make a motion, we go into closed session.
I have a motion from Mr. Hopper to go into closed session. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. It's unanimous. Thank you.